Part 14. Tomb Raider, Marry Shirley Young at the beginning. Author, October is fierce and cute. Chapter 131. Is this cauldron too high? Pansy I stood in front of the bronze tripod, looking at the bronze tripod that was almost taller than him and couldn't help but sigh. Look at this pattern, it's a bit too delicate. Fatty Wong looked at the bronze tripod carefully, and couldn't help but fall in love with it more and more. Come on, let's see what's inside. Pansy I said, grabbing the edge of the bronze cauldron as if jumping up to take a look. Fatty Wong saw this and did not lag behind. He followed up and picked up the edge of the bronze cauldron. The big cauldron was very high, and the two of them felt very comfortable even if they were grabbing the edge. No effort. When the tomb robber saw the two people acting like this, he ran over very greedily and wanted to follow them in to find the treasure. When Sumu saw this, he quickly stopped him and said, "Don't touch that. That bronze tripod is used for sacrifice. Be careful of angering the owner of the tomb." The tomb robber didn't listen to Sumu's words at all. Although Pansy I admired Sumu's ability, he could only listen to Wu Sanzhen's words. But Fatty Wong, who usually seemed the most greedy for money, when he heard Sumu's words after that, he hesitated for a moment and jumped down from the cauldron. Sumu was surprised at Fatty Wong's obedience. He originally thought that with Fatty Wong's greedy temperament, it would be difficult for him to give up the treasure he was about to get. But he didn't expect that he would let him leave the cauldron with just one word, which surprised Sumu. It was not that Fatty Wong had changed his gender. It was that during the time he got along with Sumu along the way, Sumu's abilities had already improved. He was already willing to be impressed by it, so what Sumu said at this moment also made Fatty Wong feel that it made sense. Chuyu trusted Sumu, so Fatty Wong decided to listen to his dissuasion. Panzi. Wu Sanzheng also looked towards the bronze cauldron, but he spoke slower. By the time he opened his mouth to call Pansy I had already climbed onto the bronze cauldron with the tomb robber. Pansy I took a look. Wu Sanzheng scratched his head in embarrassment and smiled. Why did he put his forehead up to express his helplessness? I'll be down right away. Pansy I said nonchalantly, turned around and wanted to jump down, but the tomb robber beside him had already shined his flashlight into the bronze tripod. Pansy I took a look and suddenly showed a surprised expression, which then turned into a look of disappointment. There was nothing in that bronze tripod. Empty. Pansy I and the tomb robber exclaimed at the same time, with disappointment in their eyes. Without any gain, Pansy I and the tomb robber jumped down from the bronze tripod at the same time. Walking back to the crowd, Fatty Wong saw this and joked. How about it? But what did you see? Pansy I couldn't help but roll her eyes at him. She knew clearly what he had said, but she still asked questions knowingly. Look at me, with such a clever plan, I don't even have the strength to climb up. Anyway, there's nothing valuable to look up at. Pansy I sneered, was that a clever plan? Didn't you just listen to Sumu's words obediently? It's a pity that such a big tripod doesn't contain anything at all. Does it look good here? Although Fatty Wong didn't go up, he still felt a little uncomfortable that there was nothing inside. Sumu heard Fatty Wong's muttering, so he opened his mouth and explained to everyone. That bronze tripod was not originally used to hold things. Everyone was confused and listened carefully. Sumu continued. Look at the position of this bronze tripod. It is in the middle of the tomb door and facing the stone coffin behind it. Therefore, this bronze tripod is used for worship at this location. Sacrifice. Fat Wong was puzzled. He glanced at the huge bronze tripod, and his heart was full of doubts. Such a large bronze tripod is used for worship? You can't use such a big cauldron to hold live poultry and livestock, right? Sumu smiled when he heard this and said, who said it is used to hold poultry and livestock? Otherwise, What else can you pretend to be, Pansy? I couldn't help but question. What else can be installed? Sumu glanced at everyone, and the slightly strange look made everyone shiver. Just when everyone felt a little frightened by the sight, Sumu continued to speak. Of course, pretending to be alive. What? A living person. A few simple words made everyone scream in surprise. Fatty Wang and Pansy Eye's faces were full of fear. Even the tomb robber was trembling with fear. Human sacrifice? Are you kidding me? Pansy Eye said with a smile. Using human beings for sacrifice is an evil method. Fatty Wang swallowed, feeling very uncomfortable as well. Sumu didn't care about the two people's disbelief. He just left his words there and it was up to them to believe it or not. Pansy Eye and Fatty Wang were naturally suspicious, so they walked together to the bronze cauldron again and began to slowly examine the bronze cauldron, trying to find out whether it was used for human sacrifice. Evidence of. The two touched the surface of the bronze cauldron and inspected it bit by bit. The complicated patterns on it looked as if they had been stained with blood at the moment, giving people a creepy feeling. The two of them walked slowly along the bronze cauldron. When they were halfway through the circle, Fatty Wang's footsteps suddenly stopped. What's wrong? Pansy Eye asked. Fatty Wang glanced at Pansy Eye, then at his men, and said, I seem to have touched something. Just now, Fatty Wang felt as if he touched a bump in his hand. The bump seemed to be able to move, so the two of them shined their flashlights towards the place where Fatty Wang touched. It was at the place where Fatty Wang's finger touched. Is a circular relief that does not fit the bronze tripod. The two tried to turn the relief in a circle. While they were waiting nervously, they suddenly heard a sudden sound coming from the corner of the tomb chamber. There was a dull noise. Wu Sanzheng, Sumu, and the others were all startled by the sudden movement. Chen Wenjin, who was a little timid, couldn't help but screamed in fright, and the tomb robber, who had always been very cowardly, was even more frightened. I had to squat down and start shivering. Fatty, what are you doing? Sumu was also startled. In this strangely silent tomb, there was a sudden sound, whoever it was would be frightened. Fatty Wang and Pansy Eye emerged from the bronze cauldron. He smiled awkwardly at everyone and said, well, we accidentally pressed a mechanism. Sumu was speechless and pointed at Fatty Wang with a helpless look on his face, then turned his gaze to the corner where the sound came from. I was almost scared to death by you. Chen Wenjin said coquettishly. After giving the two of them a roll of his eyes, he followed Wu Sanzheng and the others and walked towards the corner. Sumu and Wu Sanzheng walked in the front, approaching cautiously step by step, and the light of the flashlight gradually illuminated corner position, _. Tomb Raider, Mary Shirley Young at the beginning. Author, October is fierce and cute. Chapter 132. Everyone felt like they were facing a powerful enemy, and they all braced themselves for vigilance. But when everyone saw the corner where the true appearance was revealed under the light of the flashlight, they couldn't help but heave a sigh of relief. It turned out that in that corner, several mahogany cabinets were sent out by the agency. It turned out to be just a cabinet. It really scared me to death. Fatty Wang patted his chest. Even if he opened the mechanism himself, he was still frightened. At the same time, Sumu and Wu Sanzheng had already started to inspect a mahogany cabinet with flashlights. I saw that there seemed to be something carved on the surface of the mahogany cabinet, but the color was too bright red to make it difficult to identify. The two looked carefully and found that those strange lines were runes. That kind of rune wrapped the entire mahogany cabinet in it, making the entire mahogany cabinet look weird and sinister. Couldn't there be something being suppressed here? So many runes. Fatty Wang couldn't help but feel a lingering fear in his heart. This kind of thing made him feel like he was having butterflies in his heart. No one answered, but Sumu opened the mahogany cabinet directly. Squeak. After a slight sound, the cabinet door was opened by Su Mu. When everyone saw the scene inside, they all opened their mouths in surprise. There was actually a body hidden inside the cabinet. The corpse was standing, with a pale complexion, bulging pupils, tongue hanging out, and purple lips, as if it had been strangled. Su Mu looked gloomy and opened several other cabinets, which also contained several miserable corpses. Such a scene made Su Mu's expression become even more difficult to look at. "What's wrong?" Fat Wang saw his unkind expression and couldn't help but ask. Su Mu murmured, "Vertical burial pits, box graves, move mountains and unload ridges to go around." Wu Sanzhong on the side changed his face when he heard Su Mu's words and said, "This is a vertical burial coffin, a vertical coffin. After death, a person will never be able to sleep peacefully." As he said that, Wu Sanzhong took out a black donkey's hoof and threw it into the vertical coffin without hesitation. After the black donkey's hoof fell into the cabinet, a burst of black smoke came out. Then, as if some switch was turned on, the corpses in several other cabinets also moved slightly. Everyone found that those corpses were still able to speak, but the voices were extremely weak, and it was impossible to hear what they were saying. There was no time to think about it. Everyone took out their black donkey hooves and started to deal with the corpses. But at this moment, Su Mu noticed with sharp eyes that the appearance of one of the male corpses had actually changed. The originally green and black face was actually blinking. It changed into a familiar face. It was the face of the tomb robber, exactly the same. Everyone was shocked, and they immediately understood that there was something wrong with the tomb robber. Wu Sanzhong suddenly turned around and looked at the tomb robber, and saw the tomb robber. The thief was already grinning and approaching Pan Zi, who had not yet reacted. "Pan Zi, get out of the way!" Wu Sanzhong shouted angrily, but it was still a little late. I saw that the fake tomb robber, or the male corpse pretending to be the tomb robber, was already close to Pan Zi. Before Pan Zi could react, he grabbed Pan Zi and dragged him directly back. And the direction the male corpse was heading was exactly where the cauldron was. "No, he wants to sacrifice Pan Zi alive." Su Mu, who saw the male corpse's intention, quickly took his sword and rushed towards the male corpse. Mi Nayuping was currently dealing with a female corpse that came out of the cabinet. When he saw this, he also slashed the female corpse hard with his sword. On the neck. Although the flesh of the female corpse was a bit hard, fortunately, she was still chopped down to the ground by Mi Nayuping. After dealing with the female corpse, Mi Nayuping also chased the male corpse, who grabbed Pan Zi non-stop. So did Fatty Wang. The scene when he saw Pan Zi being arrested was so flawed. You must know that he and Pan Zi were only one step away just now. If Pan Zi hadn't been one step behind him, he would probably be the one being arrested at this moment. Let go of brother Pan Zi. Fat Wang's eyes were full of anger. He took out his gun and shot at the male corpse. A bullet hit the male corpse's shoulder directly, but it did not penetrate the flesh at all. Instead, it made a slightly dull sound. Then the bullet just clacked and fell vertically to the ground. The light in the tomb was not very good, and Fatty Wang did not see the scene where the bullet could not penetrate the flesh of the man's corpse. However, he did not dare to focus on it. He fired because he was afraid of accidentally injuring Pan Zi. Like Fatty Wang, Wu Sanzhong immediately took out his pistol and shot. However, while he was shooting, he was also chasing the male corpse. The male corpse was extremely fast. Quickly, in just a few quick steps, Pan Zi was already holding Pan Zi close to the bronze cauldron. Pan Zi struggled hard, but found that the strength of the male corpse was extremely powerful, and he couldn't break free with his strength. He couldn't help but feel a little excitement in his heart. Fear and uneasiness came. Su Mu and Mi Nayuping were equally fast. They all knew that they must not let the male corpse successfully sacrifice Pan Zi alive, otherwise the consequences would be disastrous. By then, I am afraid that the bloody corpse in the sarcophagus would be directly they broke out of the coffin. Once the beings in the coffin come out, I am afraid that even the great Logojinxian will not be able to save them. Time is fleeting, but in the eyes of everyone, the time of just a few breaths seems to have become slow. The movements were the same. Seeing Panzi and the male corpse close in front of them, everyone looked forward to Panzi being rescued. However, what happened next showed that it was already too late. Sumu and Men Yuping were seen almost at the same time the male corpse caught up. At this time, the male corpse had dragged Panzi and jumped onto the bronze cauldron. The two immediately caught up and jumped onto the cauldron. Sumu wanted to snatch Panzi away, but only had time to grab Panzi collar. Although it prevented the male corpse from dragging Panzi into the cauldron, it had already angered the male corpse. The next second, everyone saw that the male corpse was directly exposed towards Panzi's carotid artery. Sharp fangs. Those fangs are just outside the neck. Just one bite can bite Panzi's neck through, blood spurts out, and finally he bleeds to death. Mi Yuping draws out the black gold ancient sword and points directly at the male corpse. He slashed over, intending to cut off the male corpse's hands that were restraining Panzi. However, with one slash of the knife, he discovered that the body of the male corpse seemed to be much harder than the female corpse just now. Since he couldn't cut off his hands, it was boring. Yuping immediately changed his mind and stabbed the male corpse in the head with the knife. The blade of the knife was directed towards the male corpse's mouth with fangs. If he succeeded, he could also use the black gold ancient knife to slow down the male corpse. The corpse's movements. But the male corpse seemed to know Mi Yuping's intention. He pulled Panzi and turned it at an angle, so that Panzi's face was directly pressed against Men Yuping's black gold ancient sword. Men Yuping's pupils shrinking, Kankan stopped attacking at the critical moment and took back the black gold ancient sword, but in this way, there was no chance to stop the male corpse. Damn it, you're using me as a fucking knife. At this moment, Panzi couldn't break free from the man's corpse, and was used as a human shield by the man's corpse to block the attack of the stuffy oil bottle. He suddenly became furious and started to curse. GG. The male corpse let out a strange laugh that he thought was unknown, and a ferocious and weird smile appeared on his face. The gloomy laughter was like a sharp knife, piercing Panzi's eardrums, making him unable to help but start to tremble in his hands and feet. A creepy and shuddering feeling arose spontaneously. Seeing that the male corpse's fangs were about to bite Panzi's neck, everyone seemed to have foreseen the bloody scene that followed. The feeling of despair and powerlessness seemed to envelope everyone's hearts at this moment. Panzi. Brother Panzi. Wu Sanzhong and Fatty Wang haven't given up yet, and the guns in their hands are no longer about anything at this moment. Chen Wenjin has already shined the light of the flashlight directly on the male corpse, which also makes the target of their shooting more conspicuous. Some. Bang bang bang. Bang bang. Continuous gunfire sounded, but it still couldn't stop the movement of the male corpse. When those bullets hit the male corpse, it was like hitting an iron plate. They made a series of dull noises and then stopped moving. Seeing that Wu Sanzhong and Fatty Wang's guns couldn't deal with the male corpse, Chen Wenjin quickly took out the black donkey hoof from his backpack and threw it towards the male corpse without thinking. The black donkey's hoof drew an arc in mid-air and quickly fell towards the male corpse. However, at this moment, the male corpse had opened its green and black lips, revealing a pair of sharp fangs, and bit Panzi's neck directly. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Tomb Raider, Mary Shirley Young at the beginning. Author, October is fierce and cute. Chapter 133. Panzi's eyes suddenly opened wide, and he screamed in pain. The extreme fear and tension greatly stimulated his nerves, making his pain more sensitive at this moment. The male corpse listened to the painful voice in Pan Zi's mouth, and the smile on the corner of his mouth became even more evil. He seemed to be joking and did not bite through Pan Zi's neck. Instead, he only pierced the flesh on Pan Zi's neck. Even the blood only slowly overflowed from the wound instead of splattering in large amounts. Mi Nyuping had already cut his hand and stained the ancient black gold knife with his own blood. His special bloodline has a restraining effect on these zombie transformations. At this moment, he directly slashed the male corpse's neck with the blood-stained blade. However, the expected effect was not achieved. The blood-stained black gold ancient knife still failed to cause any damage to the male corpse. The blood in Mi Nyu bottle actually lost its effectiveness at this moment. Mi Nyuping was surprised that his blood had lost its effectiveness, but he was only briefly distracted before attacking the male corpse again. Even if it has no effect, his attack can still play a role in delaying and disrupting. What seemed like a long process actually happened in just a few breaths. The black donkey hoof thrown by Chen Wenjin happened to have landed on the male corpse at this moment. Black donkeys' hooves are a good thing that can deal with zongzi. The older they are, the more powerful they are in restraining evil spirits. However, at this moment, after the black donkey's hoof came into contact with the body of the male corpse, it lost most of its effectiveness, just like the blood from the stuffy oil bottle. Only a plume of black smoke came out after the contact, but the male corpse was still alive and kicking, claws grasping Pan Zi, without being affected in any way. Useless. The hearts of everyone sank suddenly. Wu Sanzhong did not give up, and kept shooting at the male corpse with the gun in his hand. A bullet pierced the void and hit the male corpse with a faint sound of breaking through the air. Bang! The loud sound hit the male corpse directly on the head. In the past, a bullet was enough to penetrate the entire head, but now the bullet still failed to cause any damage to the male corpse. Damn it! Wu Sanzhong couldn't help but cursed in a low voice, but he didn't dare to hesitate and continued shooting. Even though he knew that the bullets posed no threat to the male corpse, he still wanted to do his best. Pan Zi was his companion, he wanted to save him. Seeing that the black donkey's hooves and bullets could not hurt the male corpse, even the blood from the stuffy oil bottle, which had a restraining effect on evil spirits, had lost its supposed effect. Su Mu's heart feeling heavy, seeing that Pan Zi's life was about to be ruined by the male corpse's fangs, Su Mu gritted his teeth and directly pulled out the light sword in his hand. The blade opened in the palm of his hand with a single stroke. There was a bloody cut. The blood gushed out in an instant, and in the blink of an eye, the entire sword blade was stained with bright red blood. Since the blood from the stuffy oil bottle didn't work, Su Mu tried it with his own medicine. Try. He didn't believe that he had the blood of the ancestral dragon, and he couldn't even restrain this little male corpse. He saw Su Mu jump behind the male corpse with a long sword in his hand, and then jump behind the male corpse with the long sword in his hand. With a wave of the sword, the light flashed. Under everyone's expectant and nervous gaze, the sword blade fell directly on the neck of the male corpse. Everyone was expecting this blow to be effective, but all the previous attacks failed. The failure made everyone more worried. Amidst such complex psychological activities, everyone's eyes were fixed on Su Mu's movements without blinking. In the next second, there was an expression of disbelief on his face. When the sword went down, the originally hard neck was like tofu, and was easily cut open by the blade of the lightsaber. In the blink of an eye, the male corpse's head was directly chopped off by Su Mu with a sword. Time seemed to slow down at that moment, and everyone could even see that the head of the male corpse was chopped off. The fangs originally biting Pan Zi's neck were also cut off by the sword. It was pulled out from the flesh with a shake of the body, and then the whole head flew out directly with the force of the lightsaber. The male corpse without the head was like a puppet that had been stiff, standing there motionless. Had obviously lost all threatening power. With the inertia of the leap, Sumyu cut off the male corpse's head with a sword and kicked it directly on the male corpse's headless body. There was a dull sound. The body of the male corpse flew directly off the bronze cauldron and fell heavily to the ground. Panzi also fell down as the male corpse was pulled. Fortunately, there was a stuffy oil bottle below to catch him. This avoids the consequences of Panzi being carried directly to the ground. God, saved. Panzi held his still bleeding neck and said with a sudden look on his face. The feeling of brushing against death just now gave him an unreal illusion to this day. Wu Sanchen's eyes were horrified when he saw Sumyu kill the male corpse and save Panzi with one move. But without hesitation, he immediately stepped forward, took out a handful of glutinous rice from his bag, and patted Panzi's neck. After seeing the black blood on Panzi's neck gradually turning bright red, he stood up and thanked Sumyu. Sumyu, thank you. If it weren't for you, Panzi's life would be gone. Panzi has always been his follower, and it was he who took Panzi down to this tomb. If his life was handed down here, Wu Sanzheng felt that he would feel guilty for the rest of his life. Now that Panzi was rescued, Wu Sanzheng finally felt relieved. At this time, Chen Wenjin also came forward to say thank you to Sumyu. Like Wu Sanzheng, she regarded Panzi as someone close to them. Chen Wenjin was equally grateful that Sumyu could save him. Fatty Wang was the one with the most natural and relaxed expression among the few people. Sumyu's move that directly destroyed the male corpse just now made Fatty Wang fall in admiration. Although this is not the first time I have witnessed Sumyu's superb skills, I still can't help but be amazed again every time I see Fatty Wang. Brother Su, you are so awesome. A male corpse that is so hard can't even be penetrated by bullets, and his head was cut off by your sword. How awesome! Fat Wang gave a thumbs up with an expression of admiration. Sumu stood with his sword in hand. Hearing Fatty Wang's praise, he smiled very humbly and said, "Fortunately, I just saved him, me na you." Ping stood aside and looked at Sumyu meaningfully. The scene just now was still recalling in his mind. The body of the male corpse was extremely hard, and for some reason it didn't react to his blood. The power of his bloodline was not enough to suppress the male corpse, but Sumyu easily eliminated it. Minayuping remembered that just before Sumyu chopped off the male corpse's head, he had also infected the sword with blood just like him. Body. From this point of view, Sumyu also has this power of blood that is unknown to ordinary people. It was precisely because of this power of blood that he could easily restrain the male corpse just now. Thinking of this, Menyu-ping felt a little faintly in his heart. Guess. Sumyu's bloodline must be more advanced than his own, otherwise it would be impossible to do it so easily. I just don't know who the power of his bloodline comes from. Is it the bloodline of ancient mythical beasts? Countless thoughts are in my mind. Lingering, Minayuping kept looking at Sumyu without saying a word. He didn't ask anything. After all, everyone has their own secret. Just when everyone was praising Sumyu, the system's mechanical prompt sounded. Tomb Raider, Mary Shirley Young at the beginning. Author, October is fierce and cute. Chapter 134. Ding. It is detected that there is a dropped attribute nearby. Will the host pick it up automatically? It was still a mechanical and emotionless voice, but it made Sumyu feel better than ever before. Sure enough, Sumyu's eyes swept around inadvertently. There was a small voice next to the male corpse. It is not a small but relatively bright light group, and there are many bright or weak light groups scattered in other places on the ground. It is obvious that they fell out during the fight just now. Coming. Sumyu was overjoyed. He murmured and directly chose to check the attributes. After flipping through it, Sumyu found that many of these attributes were added to the gun attributes. Some attributes were added to the strength. The light next to the male corpse, the ball, made Sumyu's eyes light up. Because it turned out to be an attribute that increased defense. Thinking of the almost invulnerable state of the male corpse just now, Sumyu chose to pick it up automatically in his mind without hesitation. The next second, in Sumyu a series of mechanical beeps sounded in my mind. Ding! Congratulations to the host for obtaining Wu Sanzhen's firearm attribute X1. Ding! Congratulations to the host for obtaining Wan Kaichuan firearm attribute X1. Ding! Congratulations to the host for obtaining Zhang Kailing's strength attribute X1. Ding! Congratulations to the host for obtaining male corpse defense X1. Ding! Congratulations to the host. A series of beeps echoed in Sumyu's mind non-stop, making Sumyu wish he could turn on silent mode. Fortunately, the beep ended quickly, so Sumyu didn't do it. When the beeping sound stopped completely, Sumyu slowly felt the changes in his body. The attributes of firearms have made him more proficient in gunfighting, and now he is already comfortable using various firearms. Sumyu's body was enhanced by the blood of the ancestral dragon. His strength attribute was already higher than that of ordinary people, and now it has increased by several points. It's better than nothing. These few strength attributes are just a drop in the bucket for Sumyu at this moment. It will probably take some time to upgrade to the next stage. What surprised Sumyu the most was the defensive power from the male corpse. At this time, Sumyu integrated the defensive power of the male corpse, and his own defense level had reached the silver corpse level. He felt the changes in himself carefully. He could feel that his body could now barely withstand swords and guns, and even bullets could fight hard. Sumyu took a deep breath, feeling happy in her heart. His eyes glanced around, but he suddenly froze at the side, because he actually saw a shining treasure box next to the stuffy oil bottle. It's actually a treasure chest again. Sumyu was pleasantly surprised and quickly called the system to pick up the treasure box. System, open the treasure chest. Sumyu couldn't wait to call in his heart. In just 1 second, the system's beep sounded. Ding! Congratulations to the host for acquiring Zhang Kailing's sword skills. Sword skills? Sumyu's face suddenly showed joy, but he suppressed it again for a moment. You must know that Mi Na Yuping's sword skills are very good. A black gold ancient sword is in his hand like a fish in water. Now that I have actually picked up this skill, it's really an unexpected surprise. Ding! Does the host have fusion skills? The system reminded again. Sumyu made a choice without hesitation. Fusion. After giving the order, Sumyu saw a white light flashing on his body that others could not see, and then some more sword skills appeared in his mind. Sumyu closed his eyes slightly and felt it carefully. From the changes in his body, he quickly absorbed the sword skills that were integrated into his body. When Sumyu raised his head again, he was already a sword master who was not inferior to Mi Na Yuping. Unexpectedly, this secret sword technique is actually a top-level technique and can be upgraded. Sumyu was shocked. Mi Na Yuping's sword skills are really good. They are already very powerful now. I don't know how powerful they will be when they are promoted to the master level in the future. Sumyu thought this, and had many expectations and worries about the future. Sumyu suddenly felt the excitement of a sudden windfall, and said he was in a really good mood. On one side, Sumyu quietly made a big gain. On the other side, Pan Zi, who was bitten by a male corpse, was pulled to his feet by Wu Sanzheng after being bandaged for a short time. I have to say that Pan Zi is really a tough guy. He was bitten on the neck by a male corpse, and as soon as he stood up, he acted as if nothing was wrong. He was chatting and laughing with Fatty Wang and quarreling back and forth. He was really mean-spirited. Just when everyone took care of the male corpse and felt that the atmosphere between them relaxed, Sumyu suddenly laid his eyes on the huge coffin in the middle of the tomb. When Sumyu took a closer look at the coffin, his expression changed drastically, as if he had seen something extremely terrifying. The others were also startled by Sumyu's change. They quickly turned around and looked at where Sumyu was looking, only to see that their expressions also changed. I saw bursts of black-red smoke spreading from the coffin that had been confined in the coffin, and then the closed coffin lid began to slowly shake. Bang bang bang. Bang bang. The sarcophagus began to vibrate slowly, then vibrated rapidly and violently at the back, as if something inside was about to burst out of the coffin. The sarcophagus kept shaking, and a large amount of black and red smoke came out from the gaps in the sarcophagus. The scene was very terrifying. What's going on? Then, why did the coffin move on its own? Damn it, there are some 1,000-year-old rice dumplings coming out, right? Everyone made guesses and murmured in their mouths but did not dare to move their eyes away from the shaking coffin, for fear that in the blink of an eye, some terrifying existence would jump out of it. Fatty Wang, Chen Wenjin, and the others seemed to be frightened and stood there dumbly at a loss. However, Mi Nayuping stood up as soon as they saw the changes in the sarcophagus. His eyes were constantly staring at the shaking sarcophagus, and his mouth was constantly opening and closing as if he was saying something. However, the vibrations of the sarcophagus became more and more violent, as if the entire sarcophagus was about to explode in the next second. Seeing that the situation was getting more and more serious, Mi Nayupin fell to his knees directly on the ground with a pop. Tomb Raider, Mary Shirley Young at the beginning. Author, October is fierce and cute. Chapter 135. The stuffy oil bottle knelt down directly to the ground with a pop. The movements of his mouth became more and more rapid, as if he was communicating with something, and even his brows became tighter and tighter. Seeing Mi Nayuping kneeling down directly, Wu Sanzhong, Chen Wenjin and others, although they didn't know what happened, followed Men Yuping and knelt down directly. Sumu, kneel down too. Chen Wenjin saw that Sumu was still standing there motionless, so he couldn't help calling him a few words in a low voice. However, it was as if Sumu didn't hear him at all. He still stood there and looked at the sarcophagus. Wu Sanzhong looked at it a glance at the nervous Mi Nayuping. Seeing that he had begun to whisper something while kowtowing towards the sarcophagus, he glanced at Sumu who seemed to be frozen, and his thoughts were spinning for 2 seconds. He stretched out his hand towards Sumu. Wu Sanzhong grabbed Sumu and wanted to drag him to his knees. But Sumu seemed to be frozen there. Chen Wenjin saw that Wu Sanzhong couldn't pull him, so he stretched out his hand. He took hold of Sumu's other side. Sumu was pulled by the two of them, and finally knelt down, but his eyes were always staring at the Mi Nayu bottle in front of him. He had guessed and even expected it before. The stuffy oil bottle communicated with the beings in the sarcophagus, imagining whether any attribute light groups would fall out. Now that this time has really come, Sumu is more nervous than anyone else. Ding! It is detected that there is a dropped attribute nearby. Please ask the host whether to choose to pick it up automatically. Suddenly, the long-awaited mechanical sound of the system came to mind. Sumu's eyes flashed towards the oil bottle and the sarcophagus, and he saw two light groups slowly condensing into shape. Sumu glanced at I was stunned for a moment. I had just guessed that there would be such a possibility before, but I didn't expect that it would actually come true now. Not only did the light group of the attribute fall next to Mi Nayuping, but also next to the sarcophagus. Maybe it was because Sumu was confused for a long time. There is no choice, the system beeps again. Ding! I found the strength attribute dropped by the blood corpse. Will the host pick it up? Ding! I found the communication skill attribute of the rice dumpling dropped by the stuffy oil bottle. Will the host pick it up? Sumu was being pulled to the left and right by Wu Sanzhong and Chen Wenjin at this moment. He didn't have time to think about it and directly chose to pick it up in his mind. Pick up. After giving the order, the two attribute light groups seemed to have been taken away by some unknown force, and they disappeared in an instant. Does the host have fusion attributes? Fusion. Ding. Congratulations to the host for obtaining Blood Corpse power. The host's attributes have been improved by 1 level. The current level is advanced. Ding. Congratulations to the host for acquiring the communication skill of Bottled Oil Bottle Zongzi. Sumyu's heart was filled with 2 consecutive beeps. He did not expect that the strength attribute of the Blood Corpse was so unusual. He originally thought that he would have to wait a long time before he could reach the next level of strength attribute. Unexpectedly, after merging the power attribute of the Blood Corpse, his power attribute would be directly raised to a high level. It was so unexpected. And when Sumyu fused the attribute of the Zongzi communication technique, Sumyu seemed to be in the dark. As if he understood something, he looked at Mina Yuping and saw that he was still whispering something, and his heart moved. So he concentrated his attention and used the Zongzi communication technique to start listening to the communication between Men Yuping and the being in the sarcophagus. When Suma concentrated on listening, his ears seemed to automatically discard some unnecessary noise, and the sound of the stuffy oil bottle became particularly clear. In addition, there seemed to be sounds coming from the sarcophagus. There was a low and cold voice. It was the bloody corpse communicating with Mina Yuping. Anyone who dares to disturb this king's peaceful sleep will die. We have no intention of offending the prince, but please let us go. Mina Yuping's voice was different from his usual speech, and seemed to have an inexplicable accent and rhythm. If ordinary people couldn't hear him at all, they wouldn't understand what he was saying. But when the voice fell into the ears of Sumu, who understood the communication skills of Zongzi, he clearly understood the meaning of Mina Yuping's words. It turned out that Mina Yuping was just comforting the blood corpse in the sarcophagus, hoping that the blood corpse would let them go. And Sumyu also confirmed the identity of the other party from the blood corpse's reply. It was the owner of this tomb, King Lushang. The sarcophagus was shaking violently, but Sumyu heard the voice of King Lushang from the shaking sound. Why should I spare you? A slightly angry roar came from the coffin. You disturbed my king's sleep, and you are guilty of an unpardonable crime. Your Majesty, please calm down. We just want to get out alive. As long as you, Your Majesty, can hold your hand high and let us live, I am willing to accomplish something for Your Majesty. Mina Yuping kowtowed respectfully on the ground, but his disembodied voice seemed to have a little bit of calmness that belonged only to Mina Yuping, and there was no hint of humility or cowardice. The sarcophagus was still vibrating violently. Just when Sumyu thought that the relationship between Menjubotl and the existence in the sarcophagus had broken down, a faint voice came into his ears again. If you want me to let you live, there is only one condition. Please let me know clearly. Men Yuping kowtowed respectfully. If you want this king to spare your life, you can, but you must kill the traitor Tai Miansheng on my behalf. After King Lushang stated his conditions, Sumyu finally suddenly remembered. In the original work, Mina Yuping must kill the person in the jade figurine. It turns out that he has long known that the person in the jade figurine is an iron-faced person, and he must kill him. It turns out that these were all deals made between Mina Yuping and King Lushang. Mina Yuping naturally agreed to King Lushang's conditions. After receiving the promise from Menjubotl, the violently shaking sarcophagus began to slowly calm down, and finally returned to its original calm appearance. Fatty Chen Wenjin, the king of Wusan province, and Pan Zi all looked at each other with blank faces. They didn't understand what happened just now without their knowledge. Mina Yuping stood up and did not tell everyone about his deal with the blood corpse, but Sumyu knew in his heart that they were going to find the iron-faced man next. Sumu stood up like everyone else. Wu Sansheng and others were still a little frightened by the scene just now, and they did not dare to stay here anymore. So after finding the exit, they started to move directly towards the inner tomb with Mina Yuping leading the way. Sumyu now remembered the contents of the original work, knowing that they would encounter Hydra Cypress next, and even the iron-faced man who had lived for thousands of years. Although Sumyu felt a little nervous in his heart, but more of it is expectation. I don't know what kind of surprises they can bring to me when I meet the Hydra Kashiwa and the thousand-year monster Shimenchen. _ You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Tomb Raider, Mary Shirley Young at the beginning. Author, October is fierce and cute. Chapter 136. As they walked further into the tomb passage, everyone came to a large stone gate. Naturally, Wu Sanzhong went to look for the locked stone gate trap. Although Sumu had learned the tomb tunnel trap technique first, there was no need to take action yet. Wu Sanzhong moved very quickly, and soon found the mechanism button next to the stone door. After pressing the button, the stone door slowly opened amidst everyone's expectations. After opening the stone door of the tomb passage, everyone saw a glimmer of light coming from the front. Everyone felt happy, thinking that the inner tomb should be not far ahead. Boom boom boom. Boom boom boom. At this moment, a dense, rustling sound came from the tomb passage behind everyone. The sound was so loud that even the tomb seemed to be shaken, as if countless reptiles were moving quickly. I can't help but feel my scalp tingling when I listen to it. What is this sound? Chen Wenjin took a flashlight and scanned it left and right a few times, then asked with some trepidation. Wu Sanzhong listened carefully, but suddenly his face changed drastically and he exclaimed. No, it's a corpse. What? It's a zombie. When the others heard Wu Sanzhen's exclamation, their faces also changed drastically, and they were full of fear. Corpse crickets are creatures that everyone knows, and they live exclusively on corpses. If a group of corpse crickets rush towards a person, it will only take a moment. In a short time, that person would be chewed into a pile of skeletons by the corpse crickets. Judging from the rustling noise, the number of these corpse crickets would definitely not be a small number. Just imagine being eaten by such a large group of corpse crickets. Surrounded, everyone couldn't help but shiver. It felt like a cold air rushed from the soles of the feet to the sky. Come on, we have to get out of here quickly. Wu Sanzhong hurriedly waved everyone towards the inner tomb. However, in the blink of an eye, the shadow of the corpse had already appeared in everyone's field of vision. Sure enough, it was a large group of corpse crickets. The densely packed black corpse crickets were like a wave, surging towards the crowd. Damn it! Why so many? Fat Wang and Pan Zi both cursed at the same time. Pan Zi's face was already a bit ugly due to injury and blood loss, and now he has become even more pale. Hurry, go, Wu Sanzhong urged, and everyone immediately rushed towards the inner tomb. However, the zombies were very fast. If they were to catch up at this speed, everyone would not be able to escape very far before they would be overtaken by the group of zombies. By then, no matter how powerful they are, there is no way they can survive from such a large group of corpse crickets. This is not the way to go. Chen Wenjin turned around and glanced at the corpse, and said loudly while running for his life quickly. Wu Sanzhong also knew that continuing like this was not an option. The only way to escape safely was for someone to close the tomb door so that the corpses could not get in. But once this is done, the person who goes to close the tomb door will be in great danger, and there is a high possibility that he will not survive the mouths of those corpse crickets. Such an idea was abandoned by the province as soon as it arose. Among them, whether it was Fatty King Sumu or Mina Yuping, even though they had not been together for a long time, they were already regarded as his companions by him. Since they were companions, how could he watch the other party die in order to keep them alive? Wu Sanzhong thought of this method, and Sumu also thought of it. He and Wu Sanzhong had different ideas. Wu Sanzhong was unwilling to let others die, while Sumu thought that he could be the one to cut off the queen. He has the blood of the ancestral dragon in his body, and he has a powerful restraint effect on these evil creatures. It is perfect for him to stay and stop those corpses. Moreover, Sumu had another selfish motive. That's why he thought that if he stayed, the zombies wouldn't be able to hurt him at all. Maybe those zombies can also shed some attributes. You must know that the speed of corpses is very fast. He is still very greedy for the speed attribute of corpses. His current speed attribute is only intermediate, which is not enough for the current Sumu. When the corpse dragon drops its attributes later, maybe it can even level him up. Thinking this, Sumu felt happy, and her movements slowed down. When several people around him saw that he stopped instead of running, they immediately exclaimed, "Sumu, run quickly." Sumu shook his head and said, "You go in first, I'll take the lead." "What are you crazy about? Those corpse crickets are not for fun." Wu Sanzhong frowned and scolded. Although his tone was stern, the concern in his eyes was not fake. Sumu waved to everyone and said, "Don't worry, those things can't hurt me. You go ahead and leave it to him." Wu Sanzhong wanted to say something else, but was stopped by Mina Yuping next to him. In the face of Wu Sanzhen's puzzled look, Mina Yuping rarely opened his mouth to explain a few more words. He is special, and corpse crickets cannot hurt him. Everyone was shocked, not knowing that there was such a thing. In such a gap, the corpses were getting closer and closer to them. There was no time to say more. Wu Sanzhong looked at the Minayu bottle, and then looked at after looking at Sumu, he decided to believe them, so he waved to the others and ran towards the inner tomb together. Men Yuping took a deep look at Sumu, didn't say much, turned around and followed Wu Sanzhong. He trusted Sumu because he knew that Sumu's bloodline must be more powerful than his own. Sumu believed in Mina Yuping so much that he might have already known that his bloodline was special, but this was not a big problem. Turning around and walking a few steps, Sumu suddenly turned around and looked behind him, and saw that Fatty Wang, who was supposed to leave with Wu Sanzhong and the others, followed him silently. "Why are you staying?" Sumu glanced at Fatty Wang next to him and was speechless. "Why is this kid still here? Is there danger later?" Fatty Wang glanced at the corpse that was getting closer and closer, and followed Sumu towards the stone gate. He walked quickly. Although he was still a little timid, he still followed without hesitation. "I have to stay and watch you. Why are you looking at me? I'm afraid you won't be able to handle it on your own. If I stay, I can at least help you later. If you were gone, Staff Yang would cry to death." Fat Wang said awkwardly, and finally added, "We are brothers who have been through life and death." While they were talking, the two of them had already arrived outside the stone gate. After hearing Fatty Wang's words, Sumu paused slightly, and a feeling of warmth suddenly surged into his heart. "Fatty, thank you." Sumu turned around, smiled at Fatty Wang, and then pushed him into the stone door. Seeing Fatty Wang exclaiming and taking several steps back, Sumu immediately pressed the stone door without hesitation. Agency, _ Tomb Raider, Mary Shirley Young at the beginning. Author, October is fierce and cute. Chapter 137. Sumu. Inside the stone door, Fatty Wang staggered and almost fell to the ground. When he stabilized his body and ran towards the stone door had already made a dull sound and was closed directly. "Don't worry, Fatty, I'll catch up with you later." The moment the stone door closed, Sumu smiled at Fatty Wang and said, "Sumu." Fat Wang ran to the door, stretched out his hand and slapped the stone door, but he couldn't open the closed stone door at all. The mechanism to open the stone door was outside, so even if he smashed his hands here, he still wouldn't be able to open the stone door. "You kid better keep your word and catch up." Fat Wang shouted loudly while holding the stone door. After a pause, he finally turned back and chased Wu Sanzhong, Mina Yuping and the others. He knew Sumu's ability. Since Sumu did this, he would definitely be able to do it. Come back alive. He believed it. Outside the stone door, After Sumu closed the stone door, he turned back and looked at the group of corpse crickets that were almost in front of him. Each of those corpse crickets were the size of a fist, slightly larger. Some of them are even as big as footballs, and they are so densely packed that they look so dark that they make you feel trypophobic. But those zombies that are rolling towards the stone gate like a black wave are approaching Sumu's body. At this moment, one by one suddenly stopped. Some zombies behind him had no time to stop, and even tripped over and turned over. But in the blink of an eye, the surging tide of corpses came to life in front of Sumu. Stopped. Sumu just stood there. An invisible coercion escaped from his body and spread around. The entire tomb passage was enveloped. It was the coercion of the ancestral dragon bloodline, which specialized in restrain these evil creatures. All the zombies seemed to have seen their natural enemies at this moment, and they did not dare to move. Sumu stood quietly and looked at the tide of these zombies, and suddenly a slightly evil smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. Come. Come on, get moving and drop all the speed attributes for me. Whether I can upgrade or not depends on you. Sumu saw that the zombies didn't dare to approach him at all, and were even frightened by the pressure of his own bloodline so that they didn't dare to move, so he took the initiative to move towards the group of zombies. Sure enough, when he moved towards the zombies when the group of zombies walked past, not only did the zombies have no intention of harming him, they were even frightened and started to retreat. Sumu looked towards the tomb passage where the group of zombies came from, and saw that when the zombies surged over before, a lot of white light groups have fallen out, and the smile on the corner of the mouth has become bigger. Ding! Found a dropped attribute nearby. Whether the host picked it up. The system's mechanical sound sounded at the right time. Sumulian checked the attributes and directly chose to pick them up. Ding! Congratulations to the host for gaining zombie speed. Ding! Congratulations to the host for obtaining the speed attribute, the attribute value is 1. Ding! Congratulations to the host for obtaining the zombie speed attribute, with an attribute value of 1. Ding! Congratulations to the host. A series of notification sounds of increasing attribute values sounded in Sumu's mind, like a beautiful melody, which made Sumu almost fly with joy. If the attribute value continues to increase like this, it will definitely be upgraded. As Sumu moved around, the zombies began to retreat continuously. Sumu kept chasing the group of zombies while starting to pick up the attribute light balls falling from the group of corpses. If outsiders could see this scene, they would be so frightened that they could not speak. Those extremely ferocious zombie swarms were like little chickens, being driven around, and the scene was really funny. I don't know how long it took, but Sumu was chasing the zombies, killing them casually while letting the system pick up the dropped attributes. Seeing the value on the speed skill bar increasing rapidly, Sumu almost hummed a tune with satisfaction. Ding! Congratulations on the host's speed skill attribute upgrade, the current level is advanced. Suddenly, an upgrade prompt sounded. Sumu paused in pursuit of the corpse, and then his face was filled with surprise. Unexpectedly, the speed attribute has really been upgraded to a high level. Sumu murmured and decided to try his current speed. He closed his eyes and felt the changes brought about by the attribute upgrade. At this moment, he felt as if he was more relaxed than before, and he felt as if he was as light as before. Yan's feeling. When he opened his eyes, his whole aura shifted, his feet suddenly exerted force, and the whole person disappeared in place with a swish. Only a bright light was seen moving in the tomb passage at an extremely high speed. Shuttle back and forth. That was the light from the flashlight in Sumu's hand. He was moving quickly, and the zombies were frightened and ran around. The zombies that had no time to dodge were trampled to death by Sumu's kick. Not long after, the zombies fled in all directions and retreated towards where they came from. When Sumu stopped, he saw that the zombies were already escaping quickly. Sumu did not chase them. Now he has the skills, the level has been upgraded, and those zombies have lost their use value. If you escape, you will save yourself the time and energy to eliminate them all. After confirming that there are no more corpses around, Sumu came to the stone door again. After opening the stone door, he walked along the tomb passage towards the inner tomb with satisfaction. After walking for a long time, Sumu saw that the faint light in the tomb passage became more and more obvious, and he also knew that the location of the inner tomb was getting closer and closer. They were getting closer. When Sumu came to the edge of the inner tomb, he saw some traces left by Wu Sanzheng and the others. There was no trace of Wu Sanzheng and the others for the time being, but some faint noises could be heard inside. Sumu, after looking at it for a while, he decided to move forward to join Wu Sanzheng and Mi Yuping and the others. But just as he approached the entrance, he suddenly stopped, and then a black shadow suddenly attacked him. Sumu's speed attribute immediately after activating it, he instantly dodged the sudden attack and moved to a position one step away. When he stopped and took a closer look, he realized that the black shadow that attacked him was actually a long vine hanging down from the stone wall. The shape of the vine is like a human hand, with a very sharp top. Each tip is like a sharp awl. If one is stabbed by the vine, it will definitely leave a big hole in the body. So just as Mu stood still, another vine quickly wrapped around Sumu. Before he could think about it, he pulled out his lightsaber and slashed hard at the vine. Tomb Raider, Mary Shirley Young at the beginning. Author, October is fierce and cute. Chapter 138. Just as Sumu stood still, another vine quickly wrapped around Sumu. He didn't have time to think about it, he just pulled out his lightsaber and slashed hard at the vines. The Hangong sword is a rare magical weapon in the world. Sumu turned around in his hand, and the Hongguang sword flashed with cold light. A vine that was attacking Sumu was cut into two pieces by the Hongguang sword. Sumu saw that the broken vine seemed to be a living thing. It twisted back and forth on the ground a few times before it stopped moving completely. And at the break of the vine, bright red blood actually flowed out. Ding! It is detected that there is a dropped attribute nearby. Please ask the host whether to pick it up. There was a system beep, and Sumu saw a white light group slowly condensing from the vine that he had cut off. Sumu then looked through it, and was stunned after just one glance. Didn't react. It actually has the attribute of immortality. And the living vine in front of him is actually the Hydra cypress? Sumu was extremely shocked by this. The Hydra cypress is shaped like a hand-shaped vine, and is called the ghost hand vine. It has many vines and huge limbs. It is a man-eating tree, and it often has a symbiotic relationship with corpse crickets. It is said that the Hydra cypress has existed since the time of King Lu Shang. The immortality attribute dropped by the sword is not that great. Unexpected. Ding! It is detected that there is a dropped attribute nearby. Please ask the host whether to pick it up, the system prompted again. Sumu no longer hesitated and directly chose to pick it up. Ding! Congratulations to the host for obtaining the immortality attribute of Hydra cypress. The host's current immortality skill attributes are primary and the lifespan will be increased by 1 year. Sumu was stunned. He didn't expect that the longevity attribute was only at the elementary level and he had an extra year of life. He was very satisfied. After all, no one would despise him for having more lives. Sumu felt happy and was about to continue. When he cut down the Hydra cypress to gain the attribute of immortality, he heard the noise inside the cave getting louder and louder. So Sumu walked towards the cave and finally saw the situation inside the cave clearly. He saw a huge weird vine. They were frantically attacking Mi Yuping and the others, and the long vines kept beating them. Mi Yuping and the others could only resist in embarrassment as they were being whipped by the vines. On the ground not far from them lay a body whose head had been shot. Sumu looked at the corpse carefully and found that it was the blue-eyed fox corpse. Sumu remembered the plot in the original book. Now that the blue-eyed fox corpse had been headshot, Chen Wenjin must have swallowed the Kailan blood. Sumu was watching, cursing in my heart. I saw that the attack of the weird vine became more and more fierce. Under the attack of the weird vine, I was able to deal with it with ease, but Wu San's Hung Wang Fatty and the others seemed not so neat. The worst situation, it was Chen Wenjin who was about to lose his support. At this moment, a thick vine quickly passed through the crowd and attacked Chen Wenjin directly. The others were entangled by the vines and tried to help. Seeing Chen Wenjin dying, "Wenjin! Wu!" Sans Hung exclaimed. He wanted to save people, but was blocked by the vines in front of him. He could only watch the danger coming to Chen Wenjin. At this moment, Wu Sans Hung felt as if his whole heart was about to be torn apart. A sharp pain surged into his heart. He had no way to protect the woman he liked. Wu Sans Hung gritted his teeth and wished he could take her own life. Seeing that the vine was about to pierce Chen Wenjin's body, however, Chen Wenjin still had no strength to dodge or fight back at this moment. The tragedy seemed to happen in the next second. At this critical moment, a figure suddenly fell from the sky. A sword flashed past, and the thick vine appeared from the middle. It was cut off directly and fell to the ground. After twisting, it turned into an ordinary tree vine like dry firewood. Chen Wenjin was still in shock. He originally thought that he was going to die here, but he didn't expect that he could still survive. Risk one's life. Sumu. Chen Wenjin looked at the person in front of him and murmured. Wu Sans Hung, who had been paying attention to Chen Wenjin, seemed to be pulled from hell to heaven in an instant because of Sumu's move, which was like a divine weapon descending from heaven. The vines were Sumu cut off, as if he was irritated, and the attack began to become more crazy. For a moment, the speed of the vines waving and lashing seemed to become faster, making everyone feel doubly strenuous. It can't go on like this. During the difficult response, Fatty Wang couldn't help but wailed. At this moment, he felt like he was about to be beaten to death by the strange vines. The others were not much better, and they all had injuries on their bodies. Extremely embarrassed. Third brother, didn't you say that Tianxinyan can restrain this Hydra cypress? Why is it useless? Fatty Wang was distracted and was whipped again, and was almost tied up by those vines. He finally got rid of it, and the next second more vines came up again. They had used Tianxin rock to deal with Hydra cypress before, but found that it had no effect at all. Wu Sans Hung was also speechless. How could he know why Tianxinyan failed? He only knew that it was recorded in the book that Tianxin rock was the thing that restrained the Hydra cypress, but he did not expect that it would be ineffective. Could it be that this Hydra cypress was a mutant species? Mina Yuping kept silently chopping those Hydra cypresses that looked like a swarm of demons dancing around. Listening to the conversation between Fatty Wang and Wu Sans Hung, he was just a little confused, but he focused directly on the Hydra cypresses. On the tree, carefully observing something. His eyes swept across the Hydra cypress vines inch by inch, and suddenly Mina Yuping's eyes stopped at the place where the vines connected to the big tree. Sumu! Mina Yuping suddenly shouted loudly. Sumu, who was helping Chen Wenjin deal with the dancing vines, quickly looked at Mina Yuping and responded. What's the matter? The weak point is at the root of the tree. Menjuping's words were still brief, but they were all focused. Sumu immediately understood Mina Yuping's intention. He couldn't get away by himself, so he asked himself to deal with the ghost hand vine. Sumu quickly, after cutting off the surrounding vines and confirming that it would take some time for the vines to surround them again, Sumu quickly ran in the direction pointed by Menjuping. Perhaps he knew Sumu's purpose, and the vines dancing around him began to converge towards the direction of Sumu was gathering. After Mina Yuping felt that the pressure was reduced, he quickly cut down the vines and ran in the direction of Sumu with several leaps. Mina Yuping stopped those who wanted to attack Sumu. The vines, while Sumu directly took the light sword and chopped down hard at the connection between the tree roots. Felu reminds you, 3 things about reading: collect, recommend, and share, comma. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Tomb Raider, Mary Shirley Young at the beginning. Author, October is fierce and cute. Chapter 139. Sumu directly took the light sword and slashed hard at the connection between the tree roots. A thick vine quickly blocked it. The vines were already unusually thick, and they moved faster than other vines. The vines were quickly drawn towards Sumu, trying to stop Sumu's movement at the cost of breaking a vine. Sumu was indeed stopped, but he did not give up. Instead, he activated his speed attribute and became very fast in an instant. Everyone only had time to see an afterimage before they saw that Sumu had already bypassed the chasing vines and attacked towards the connection between the tree roots. The strange vines were full of desire for survival. Knowing that Sumu was a huge threat, they directly stretched out the thick vine roots to block Sumu's front, blocking Sumu's attack for private purposes. I'm here to help you. At this moment, Mi Nayuping also chased after him, leaping directly between the vines. Swinging the black gold ancient sword in his hand, he directly cut off a few of the vines blocking the road. It looked like there were still several vines that were not broken. Mi Nayuping couldn't help but frowned. His own strength was obviously not enough to deal with these thick and mutated vines. However, although Mi Nayuping failed to cut down all the vines blocking the way, Sumu had already taken advantage of Mi Nayuping. In order to buy time, he quickly went around the gaps in the vines. Seeing that the weak point of the vines was already in front of his eyes, the unwilling vines gave up and tangled with the stuffy oil bottle and began to take back all the vines. In his own, the weaknesses were intertwined and woven into a strong net. The net was like a shield, enough to withstand any attack from the outside world. However, Sumu did not hesitate at all, and he jumped with a lightsaber in his hand. He jumped onto a thick vine, swung his long sword in his hand, the cold light on the sword flashed, and directly cut a crack in the vine shield. Huh? So hard? Sumu was startled, but he did not slow down the attack speed. Instead, he mobilized his own strength attribute, raised his sword high and slashed hard again. Sumu's strength attribute had been upgraded to a high level at this moment, almost to the point where it was like breaking mountains and cracking rocks. No matter how strong the vines were, they were just vegetation after all. They had no resistance at all under Sumu's slash of the sword. They were broken in half in an instant, and countless broken branches fell to the ground. Some of them fell to the ground. The scattered vines tried to come up to attack and wrap around Sumu, but Sumu chopped them off one by one and fell to the ground with the force of chopping melons and vegetables. In an instant, everyone only saw Sumu moving back and forth flexibly among the waving vines. Extremely. The terrifying vine that had beaten them just now was actually crushed by Sumu with his own strength and chopped into a bear shape. Sumu came to the junction of the tree roots and cut it with his sword, and saw that the vine seemed to have been tortured. As if in great pain, the entire vine began to tremble violently. It trembled and spurted out a large amount of fresh liquid, and then gradually stopped moving. Just when everyone breathed a sigh of relief, they heard it dry. Sumu was surprised. Following the sound, he saw that a big hole had been opened at the place where the connection was made, and a huge coffin was spit out from between the big hole. Hey, why is there a coffin inside? Everyone gathered around. Although everyone was in a very embarrassed state just now. But when Sumu and Men Yuping worked together to kill Hydra Bai, the pressure on Wu Sanzhong and the others was gone. They finally took advantage of that little time. After taking a few breaths and regaining some strength, Chen Wenjin stepped forward to inspect the coffin, studying which of the tomb owners the carved patterns on it belonged to. Others also gathered around the coffin, wanting to see what was inside. What a treasure! After all, Sumu had no interest in the coffin. He knew a little about the original work, so he felt that even if there were any good things in it, it would have been replaced by the old guy named Wang. It was boring. With the oil bottle, Sumu went to clean up the remaining vines with him. As far as he could see, Sumu felt that his eyes were going to be dazzled by the light ball in that area. I really made a profit this time. Sumu murmured in his heart, feeling quite good. When the system got close to those light groups, a series of notification sounds began to appear. Ding! It is detected that there are dropped attributes nearby. Please ask the host whether to pick it up. Pick up. Sumu didn't hesitate at all and made a choice directly. Ding! Congratulations to the host for obtaining the longevity attribute of Hydra Cypress, attribute value x1. Ding! Congratulations to the host for obtaining the longevity attribute of Hydra Cypress, attribute value x1. Ding! Congratulations to the host for obtaining Wu Sanzhen's strength attribute value x1. Ding! Congratulations to the host for getting. A series of beeps sounded in Sumu's ears, most of them coming from Hydra Cypress's longevity attribute, and occasionally a few strength attributes. Although not much, it was better than nothing. His current power level is already at a high level, and it will probably take a long time to get to the next level. Ding! Congratulations on the host's immortality attribute upgrade. The current level is intermediate. Ding! Congratulations to the host for upgrading his immortality attribute. The current level is advanced. The sound of the attribute upgrade prompt made Sumu almost unable to suppress the smile on his face. He didn't expect that the attribute light group in that place would directly upgrade his immortality attribute from basic level to advanced level. In just a short time, Sumu's lifespan was increased by a full 50 years. Adding this to his original lifespan, his lifespan has exceeded the lifespan of ordinary people. Let me help you. Chen Wenjin looked at the coffin and came over to help Sumu and the others clean up the vines. However, he was pulled back by Wu Sanzheng after just a few steps. What were you doing there? There are Sumu and brother Zhang over there. You can't help them much, so you'd better come over and take care of the wounds first. With that said, Wu Sanzheng pulled her away without waiting for Chen Wenjin to refute. Chen Wenjin looked down at the hand holding him, and listened to Wu Sanzhen's words full of concern, and couldn't help but blush slightly. Fatty Wang came over at some point, looked at the two people leaving hand in hand, and teased Sumu. Brother, are you envious? Sumu tilted his head, looked at Fatty Wang in confusion, and said. Why should I be envious? I envy others that they can spread their dogs food, but you have no chance. Fatty Wang snorted. Is this called the rotation of feng shui? In the past, we could only eat the dog food you spread, but now it's your turn to eat too. Sumu reacted with a speechless face, raised his leg as if to kick Fatty Wang's ass, gritted his teeth and said. Get out of here, I don't want to eat dog food, so I'll give you a fight. Fatty Wang laughed and ran away. Tomb Raider, Mary Shirley Young at the beginning. Author, October is fierce and cute. Chapter 140. Sumu and Mina Yuping cleaned up the remaining ghost hand vines, and chopped down some of the small vines that were still waving randomly. On the other side, Wu Sanzheng pulled Chen Wenjin and bandaged her injuries himself before going back to studying how to open the coffin. With Wu Sanzheng, an expert in the art of mechanism calculation, the mechanism of a coffin was quickly found by Wu Sanzheng. So when Sumu and the others had just finished cleaning up, they heard Fatty Wang's exclamation from the coffin. Damn it! Third Master is awesome. Fat Wang's voice was loud, full of surprise, followed by Pan Zi's complimentary voice, which was an affirmation of Wu Sanzhen's technical skills. Sumu and Mina Yuping looked at each other and put down their hands. The ghost hand vine inside also walked towards the coffin. After walking in, the two heard Chen Wenjin talking to Fatty Wang. It meant that now the coffin had been opened and they could check the contents inside. You two are still very good at opening the sarcophagus so quickly. Don't worry, we will do the rest of the physical work to ensure it is clean and tidy. Fat Wang patted his chest, and it made a banging sound. At this moment, he also showed great admiration for Chen Wenjin. After completely opening the lid of the sarcophagus, Fatty Wang and Pan Zi hurriedly stepped forward to check it out. And then they discovered that what they opened was actually just an outer coffin, and there was actually a layer of coffin inside the sarcophagus. This turned out to be a double coffin burial. Most of the so-called double coffin burials appear in ancient tombs. That is, after a person dies, put it into a small wooden coffin, and then place the small wooden coffin in a large stone coffin. The small one is called a coffin, and the big one is called a coffin. This is the origin of the so-called coffin. After everyone opened the stone coffin, found that there was actually a wooden coffin inside, and knew that the identity of the owner of the tomb must not be from a small background, because in ancient times, only high-ranking officials would set up double coffins in tombs. Why is there a coffin? Fatty Wang muttered, secretly saying that the owner of the tomb was really in trouble. Although he thought so, Fatty Wang and Wu Sanzhong stepped forward and opened the lid of the wooden coffin, immediately revealing the contents. Everyone rushed forward and looked inside, and saw that lying inside the wooden coffin was a jade figurine covered in jade clothes. Next to the jade figurine, there was a very beautiful purple gold box. The moment Fatty Wang and Wu Sanzhong saw the jade figurines, their eyes seemed to light up. Golden jade clothes. The two people exclaimed at the same time. The jade figurine was wearing a jade garment with golden threads. According to legend, it was a very rare treasure. If a person wears a jade garment with golden threads after death, the jade pieces will wrap the body in it. And then after a long time, that person can be resurrected. And the person and the jade wrapped by the jade pieces of the golden jade clothing, as a whole, are called jade figurines. Thinking that this is something that can a treasure that can bring people back to life. Fatty Wang and Wu Sanzhong both had the idea to take off this golden jade garment. The two looked at each other and immediately received each other's thoughts. Their thoughts coincided with each other, and they immediately had a tacit understanding. They nodded to each other, and then stretched out their hands towards the jade figurine in the coffin. However, when their hands first touched the jade figurine, they were shocked to find that the jade figurine seemed to be alive. It actually has a warm body temperature, and its chest is rising and falling slightly. Place your hand between the nose of your head, and you can even feel the breathing air flowing out from between the gaps in the jade pieces. Damn it! This thing is alive. Fat Wang was so frightened that he quickly retracted his hand. Even Wu San took a step back with a solemn look on guard. Seeing the two of them looking like this and hearing Fat Wang's scolding, everyone couldn't help but become curious. The person inside the coffin has probably been dead for thousands of years. Could he still be alive? However, the fact is that there is a living person inside the jade figurine. Is the legend of the golden jade garment true? Can this thing really bring the dead back to life? Although everyone has known about the rumors of the golden jade clothes before, many of the rumors are unrealistic. Although Fatty Wang and Wu Sanzhong also coveted the efficacy of the golden jade clothes, they only came with a skeptical attitude now that they see that it does have such a magical effect. The surprise in the eyes of Fatty Wang and Wu Sanzhong becomes even more intense. This thing must be taken off. Fat Wang underestimated, and his eyes scanned up and down the jade figurine in the wooden coffin, carefully looking for ways to dismantle the jade garment intact. Wu Sanzhong also had the same idea. But before he and Fatty Wang could put their thoughts into action, a tall figure walked over directly through the crowd. "Little brother, do you also have this golden jade dress?" Before they could say the word interest, Wu Sanzhong and Fatty Wang were horrified to discover that Mi Yiping had reached out and pinched the neck of the jade figurine in the wooden coffin. "Little brother, what are you doing?" Fat Wang was so shocked by the sudden scene that he stuttered when he spoke. When he wanted to stop Mi Na Yuping, he was stopped by Su Mu, who walked over slowly. "Don't worry, just stand here and watch." Su Mu knew why Mi Na Yuping did this, because the people inside the jade figurines were iron-faced. Mi Na Yuping and the blood corpse had made a deal before. As long as the blood corpse could let them go, Mi Na Yuping would help the blood corpse to kill Tai Mian Sheng. Now that he saw Tai Mian Sheng, he naturally had to complete the task. Although Wu Sanzhong didn't know what Men Yuping was going to do, after hearing the conversation between Su Mu and Fatty Wang, he stopped stepping forward to stop him. Everyone just watched, and saw Mi Na Yuping pinching the jade figurine's neck, and then began to slowly exert force. Mi Na Yuping looked at it carefully bit by bit with anger on his face. The changes in the jade figurine. At first, the jade figurine did not change much, but as the strength of Mi Na Yuping's hand increased, the jade figurine began to struggle in Mi Na Yuping's hand. However, no matter how the jade figurine struggled, the hand of Mi Na Yuping was like an iron pliers, tightly clasped around the neck of the jade figurine. The jade figurine felt threatened, and even the wooden coffin began to shake due to the violent struggle. However, Menmen but Yuping stared at him unblinkingly, and the strength in his hands suddenly increased. So everyone only saw the jade figurine struggling to reach out his hands, as if the power was suddenly cut off, and his hands dropped heavily. He went down. This iron-faced man who had lived in the golden jade clothes for thousands of years, waiting for one day to be resurrected and return to the world, was strangled to death by Mi Na Yuping when he was at his weakest. Su Mu quietly watched Mi Na Yuping angrily strangle Tai Mian Sheng to death. He didn't care at all about who the person in the jade figurine was. His attention was now focused on the treasure box that suddenly appeared next to Tai Mian Sheng. That was the treasure box that fell directly from Tai Mian Sheng's body when he was struggling. Su Mu had already seen the unusually conspicuous box without the system prompting him. A treasure chest actually dropped. Su Mu was pleasantly surprised. "You will never be disappointed if you know what's in the treasure box." Su Mu couldn't wait to let the system pick up the treasure box. After opening the treasure box, he felt extremely excited. Ding! Congratulations to the host for obtaining the skill attribute of Thousand Doors Mechanism. Su Mu took a closer look and saw that the Thousand Gates machine technique was actually a complete version, with much better attributes than the mechanism skill he had picked up from Wu Sanzhong before. He couldn't wait to choose fusion, and watched a flash of light on his body. The white light that passed by made me feel so happy. Ding! Congratulations to the host Kinmen Jishu for his attribute upgrade. His current level is master level. The mechanical beep of the system made Su Mu couldn't help but smile. He didn't expect that his machine skills would be upgraded from entry level to master level. This was a direct leap across several realms. Su Mu had some. I was curious as to how such a treasure could fall out of Tai Mian Sheng's body. After thinking about it, I felt relieved. The entire Lu Palace was designed by Tai Mian Sheng. He must know the knowledge of Kinmen Jishu, so from his body it is not so strange that the skill treasure chest of thousands of machine techniques dropped. Seeing Mi Na Yuping strangling the jade figurine to death, Chen Wenjin, who did not know the contents of the deal between Men Yuping and the blood corpse, directly came forward to question Men Yuping. "Why did you want to strangle him? This might be a person who has lived for thousands of years. Such a jade figurine that has lived for thousands of years may be of great research value. Now that it has been strangled to death by Mi Na Yuping, no matter how you think about it, it feels like a waste of natural resources." Although Fatty Wang was told by Su Mu that Mi Na Yuping had his own ideas, he still couldn't figure out why. Seeing Chen Wenjin coming up to question him, he couldn't help but step forward and ask. "Yes, why did you strangle him?" Su Mu knew the truth. When he saw Chen Wenjin questioning Mi Na Yuping with a suspicious look on his face, he stood up and said, "Don't get excited. I think this guy must have a reason for doing this. Otherwise, why would he step forward and strangle him to death for no reason? You guys should calm down first and listen to my brother explain the reason. Sumu couldn't say that he knew about the deal between Mi Nayuping and the blood corpse, so he could only speak to comfort the others. Mi Nayuping raised his eyes and glanced at a few people with a calm expression. Then, in the expectant eyes of everyone, he looked towards Mu Coffin, raised his chin and said in a deep voice. The truth you want to know is in that purple gold box. Underscore, comma.